Slaughter High starts with a reunion invite and a revenge setup, but the real engine of the film is seeded years earlier. Before the murders, before the trap is even in place, the film shows you exactly why any of this is happening. A group of classmates decide Marty Ranson was fair game. Everything that follows grows out of that choice. The bloodshed is never really a surprise. The film points straight at it from the beginning. By 1986, the slasher boom was already running on fumes. Slaughter High doesn't seem bothered by that at all. There's no self-awareness, no attempt to update the formula, no interest in commenting on where the genre had gone. It sticks to the old template and commits to it fully. And to be fair, that seems to work in its favour. The film feels oddly out of time, even for the year it came out, but it owns that feeling. It wants to tell you a sour revenge story inside a decaying school, and that is exactly what it does. That approach fits the film's history. It was originally meant to be called April Fool's Day before another release took that title. You can still feel that idea stuck in the finished version. The prank, the joke, the public humiliation, all of that stays right at the centre of the story. One act of cruelty doesn't fade with time, it festers, and years later it hardens into a murder plot. The opening makes that clear very quickly. Doddsville High barely looks convincing as a school even before the nightmare starts, but the social hierarchy comes through straight away. Marty's the outcast from the very first moment. He's the science kid, the easy target, the one person in the building who still thinks basic kindness might exist. Carol lures him towards the girls' locker room with the exact kind of promise he's too naive to question. The others wait nearby, ready to turn the whole thing into a show. Calling what happens next a prank undersells it badly. Marty's stripped, filmed, dragged around, shoved headfirst down a toilet and laughed at from every angle. The scene runs long enough for it to become uncomfortable. That's clearly what the film wants. This isn't a brief lapse, not one bad decision. These kids are vicious and the film wants to tell you that from the start. A teacher eventually appears, but by then the damage is done. Slaughter High pushes things further. Somebody's give Marty a joint laced with poison, which he smokes in the lab, where he's working on a chemistry project. The joint makes him sick. He runs to the men's bathroom to vomit. While he's gone, the experiment's rigged to explode in his face. Upon Marty's return, the setup works. Long story short, Marty gets sulfuric acid in his face and horrifically burns. Public humiliation turns into permanent damage in a matter of seconds. That's the point where the revenge story locks into place. Up to then, it's ugly. After the acid attack, it becomes a lot harsher. These people haven't simply upset someone. They haven't just embarrassed him. They've destroyed his body and his future for their own amusement. From that point on, any sympathy the film wants to feel for these victims has a steep hill to climb. 10 years pass, at least according to the script, even if the makeup does very little to sell the idea. Carol has become an actress, or something close to one. The others have drifted into mediocre adulthood. Then the reunion invitations start to appear. They go along with it for reasons that only make sense in slasher logic. People in these films never treat obvious danger as a reason to leave. They treat it as an inconvenience. By the time they arrive, the warning signs are ridiculous. The weather's foul. The building is clearly abandoned. There's no staff, no crowd, no sign that a real reunion was ever organised. The place already feels wrong. Every person there should clock that immediately. They don't because the film needs them inside. Once they break in, things get worse. The reunion room's already decorated with drinks laid out. Old lockers have been dragged into place. Marty's locker's there too, like a threat made physical. A caretaker tells him the school's been closed for years. That should settle it right there. Instead, they stay. They drink, they wander around as if denial might somehow keep them safe. The caretaker dies first. That clears away the last outside presence and leaves the building fully in Marty's control. Once the jester outfit appears, the film's central idea finally clicks into place. Marty's turned himself into a living joke. The victim of a prank now dresses as mockery itself. It's a much better choice than a generic mask. The costume is theatrical, bitter, and slightly ridiculous in the right way. That's important. This whole revenge plot grows out of ridicule. Marty's not trying to look cool. He's trying to turn the thing that broke him into an identity. From there, the movie moves into kills that people actually remember. One of the former tormentors drinks a doctored beer and suffers a stomach explosion. So excessive, it lands somewhere in between revolting and pretty funny. Another wanders off for a bath, despite the obvious fact there's a killer on the loose in the building. Slaughter High has a habit of daring you to object to its logic, then distracting you with an ugly set piece before you can dwell on it. The tone shifts round a lot. One moment is pushing gross out nasties, the next it's playing things in a meaner, more direct register, but often it stops the film from settling into anything predictable. Consistent's not the word for it. Still, it's really dull. The victims are not memorable because they're deeply written. They're memorable because the film gives them just enough personality for their past cruelty to cling to them. It never tries too hard to clean them up or give them excuses. They were awful kids, and enough of that awfulness still hangs around in adulthood for that revenge angle to keep its bite. As the body count rises, the survivors make the usual bad decisions. They split up. They wander into dark rooms alone. Old flirtations restart because apparently a death trap is as good a place as any for terrible judgments. One of them tries to escape by car and finds Marty waiting in the back seat. None of this is clever writing, but the film has a grubby momentum that carries it over weak logic. Even when the script cuts corners, the setting and the malice keep things moving. What helps Marty stand apart from generic slashers is his methods feel personal. He was the science kid, so the kills lean into chemicals, traps, improvised machinery, and whatever the building gives him. A lawnmower, a rig bed, an electric trap straight out of an 80s horror fever dream. None of it is remotely realistic, but it does feel specific. The kills don't come across as like random effect ideas dropped into the film. They feel like they came from one mind going through one old grudge. Simon Scudamore does more with Marty than the script strictly requires. Early on he plays him painfully open and completely exposed and totally unaware of what's coming. Once the costume goes on, the performance turns theatrical and venomous, but you still feel the earlier version underneath it. And for me that's massively important. It stops Marty from becoming another faceless slasher machine. However broad the film gets, the character still feels rooted in that first humiliation. The school itself does a lot of heavy lifting too. It barely resembles a real school, but that hardly matters by this point. The building feels damp, broken and contaminated. Corridors seem to lead nowhere. Rooms look abandoned halfway through somebody else's story. The whole place has a cold, rotten texture. It looks less like a school and more like somewhere that's already been condemned. That atmosphere does get undercut by lighting. Some scenes are so dark that you're left to piece together what's happening from movement and sound. Atmosphere is one thing. Barely being able to see a film is another. Slaughter High crosses that line more than once. By the last act, the writing starts to fray. Bodies appear where they need to. The geography of the building changes depending on what the scene needs. Logic becomes optional. Even so, the film has built up enough resentment and nastiness into the setup to survive a fair amount of sloppiness. The climax turns into a long chase through locker rooms, corridors, stage areas and broken windows. It does run a bit too long. Still, the arrival of early morning light helps a lot. After so much murky darkness, that pale daylight changes the mood completely. Everything suddenly looks sadder, emptier and more worn out. The film becomes easier to see. At the exact moment, all the old damage has been confronted properly. Showing Marty without the mask is the right choice. There's no grand monster revealed underneath. No superhuman creature, no hidden transformation. It's still Marty. The asylum dream ending is a bit daft. The film probably didn't need it. Still, it fits this kind of film. Slaughter High never feels like something that knows how to stop neatly. So ending on one last warp note feels oddly appropriate. There are plenty of reasons this film can be dismissed. The cast looks too old in flashbacks. The school barely works as a believable location. The climax outstays its welcome. Some scenes are so dim, you're half watching them by guesswork. None of that stops this movie sticking in your mind. The kills have real thought behind them. I always get this guy's name wrong. Harry Manfredini, the Friday the 13th guy. His score does more work than it usually gets credit for. Marty's a stronger villain than most of these films in this tier can be bothered to build. And the nastiness feels genuine, rather than decorative. It arrived after the first rush of slashers. and it felt too old-fashioned for where horror was heading next. That gap probably helped bury it. Even so, it deserved more attention than it got. The film keeps finding people because it commits to its own unpleasant little world completely. Rough, sour, often ridiculous, and mean in a way that feels real. For something this scrappy, that goes a long way. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, all that pleasantness. Thank you for watching. Love ya.